Although born a slave, I always felt I was a man and ought to be free. And I would be free or die. 23 years I was a slave. For most slaves, 23 years was only the beginning. For me, it was the end. To be free or die? Yes, I feared death, but I feared more a shackled life for my wife and 2 children. To be free or die? I had to be free. I worked as a wheelman, a pilot, but you'd never hear me called that, in the Charleston harbor on the ship Planter with several other slaves. When the war between the states got between our waters, the ship became the CSS Planter. We gained a captain, his mate, and an engineer. And anger boiled up inside me when these men took us in their charge. I was now not only a slave, but a slave serving the Confederacy. I had to take action of my own. I needed a plan. For the better part of a year, I kept close watch of the captain and his men. Conversations, movements, talks of what was to come, always listening for any suggestion of what was to come. On May 12th, I will remember this moment always, I overheard the captain suggest to his men that sleep ashore that night. This was against regulation. I too would go against the rules that night, though my punishment, if caught, would be much greater. I prepared my wife for the plan, but also prepared her for the worst outcome. She said, "Where you die, I die." I gathered my crew of 7 fellow slaves. I told them to have their families at North Atlantic Wharf. We would pick them up and sail to the Union. Their eyes were full of fear, but not without hope. At 8 o'clock, the captain and his men went ashore. We waited until 3 a.m. We pulled the anchor and steamed up toward North Atlantic Wharf. We gathered our trembling families and headed toward Union waters, but our troubles were not over yet. There were 4 Confederate checkpoints to pass. I took the captain's coat and hat and disguised myself, and I walked about the wheelhouse, just as he did so many times before. We passed Castle Pinckney undetected, Fort Ripley undetected, Fort Johnson undetected. The last and most treacherous was Fort Sumter. See, after Fort Sumter, there was freedom. As dawn broke and we approached Fort Sumter, I gave the signal and waited for the returning signal. Those seconds were long, but at last, Fort Sumter signaled back. Free to go. Far out on the water, we saw the Union blockade. We struck that Confederate flag and hoisted up a white sheet, and the crew couldn't help but celebrate with shouts of freedom. I remained silent, too overwhelmed to speak, until we came aboard the USS Onward, a fitting name for where we were headed. I was greeted with amazement and confusion. I took off that Confederate coat and that captain's hat, and I said, "I thought this vessel might be of some service to Uncle Abe."